The climate crisis is no longer a distant threat. It is here, shaping our present and defining our future. Rising seas, extreme heat, floods, wildfires, and devastating storms disrupt lives across the globe. Families are being displaced, farmers are losing crops, children are growing up in a world of uncertainty. Those least responsible are often the hardest hit. But this is not just a story of crisis. It's a story of possibility, because we're on the cusp of the clean energy era, the renewables revolution. Leaders, now is the time to seize the biggest economic opportunity of our lifetime. With national climate plans, we have the blueprints for successful economies and societies, creating jobs, expanding investments, and building opportunities for all. Saving lives and safeguarding public health. Building energy independence and security. Connecting communities and upholding Indigenous rights. Limiting increasingly dangerous and costly impacts of climate change. Protecting nature and biodiversity, which protects us all. This is our moment of opportunity. Let's seize it.
Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies, friends, colleagues, good afternoon. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Melissa Fleming. I am the UN Undersecretary General for Global Communications, and it is my honor to moderate the special event on climate convened by His Excellency, Mr. António Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, and His Excellency, Mr. Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, President of Brazil, who will be with us any time now. The Secretary General and President Lula have agreed to work together to mobilize increased action on climate ahead of COP30, which Brazil will host in November. Against the backdrop of a worsening climate crisis and challenging geopolitics, we are here today to discuss the steps we can collectively take to accelerate the just energy transition, to strengthen climate justice for developing countries, and to protect our natural world. We have all the solutions we need to limit temperature rise to 1.5 degrees. What we need today is action. Excellencies, we will start with a scientific assessment of the current efforts to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement. And this will be presented by Professor Johan Rockström, Director of the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research, and Professor Catherine Hayhoe from Texas Tech University. Professors, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Your Excellencies, co-citizens on planet Earth. It's now 10 years since the world in Paris entered the legally binding agreement to avoid dangerous climate change. Since then, science has become overwhelmingly clear. Allowing long-term global warming to exceed 1.5 degrees Celsius constitutes danger. And yet, greenhouse gas emissions continue rising, and in 2024, annual global temperature change was pushed beyond 1.5 degrees Celsius for the first time on our watch. This is a deep concern. An even deeper concern is that warming appears to be accelerating, outpacing emissions. The long-term average warming is now between 1.3 and 1.4 degrees. We are on a path to breach 1.5 degrees Celsius multi-decadal boundary within the next 5–10 years, a temperature we've not experienced over the past 100,000 years. Here we must admit failure. Failure to protect peoples and nations from unmanageable impacts of human-induced climate change. But we don't have to keep failing. Returning to below 1.5 degrees by the end of this century must remain the obligation for all international efforts to limit dangerous climate change. Extreme heats, fire, droughts, water scarcity, flooding, and land degradation, reinforced by us, are already impacting the lives of billions of people around the world. Beyond 1.5 degrees Celsius, these dangers will become increasingly unmanageable. Every tenth of a degree of avoided warming matters, saves lives and livelihoods. This is not a time for resignation. Beyond 1.5 degrees Celsius, there's also a real risk of crossing tipping points. The most recent science concludes that we're therefore dangerously close to triggering fundamental and irreversible change. If we make the right choices going forward, though, there is still an overshoot pathway that can bring temperatures back below 1.5 degrees Celsius by the end of this century. Such a narrow escape remains possible, but it will be extremely challenging. It requires deep and rapid reduction of all greenhouse gases, involving a near complete transition, starting now, away from fossil fuels. We also know that cutting emissions won't be enough. We need to massively scale up carbon dioxide removal. For every 0.1 degrees Celsius of planetary cooling, 200 billion tons are needed to be removed from the atmosphere. But even if this succeeds, we fail, unless we safeguard the world's most powerful carbon sink and planetary cooling system, a healthy planet. If we don't return to the safe operating space of the 9 planetary boundaries that regulates Earth's stability, including biodiversity, pollutants, land, nutrients, and the ocean, a safe climate future is out of reach, irrespective of our mitigation efforts. Don't be fooled. We are currently following a path that will take us to 3 degrees Celsius in just 75 years, shorter than the existence of this very institution. An existential threat we have not experienced in the last 3 million years. And there's no guarantee that efforts to cool the planet will succeed. So my message today, science is clear. We have a planetary crisis on our watch, and we do have scalable solutions for phasing out fossil fuels, efficient resource use, and transformation to healthy and sustainable food. Pathways that makes us all winners. The window to a manageable climate future is still open, but just. Failure is not inevitable, it is a choice. Thank you. And with that, I pass on to my dear colleague, Professor Katharine Hayhoe.
Thank you. As Dr. Rockstrom indicated, we are conducting an unprecedented and perilous experiment with Earth, our only home. The science is clear. Right now, according to natural factors, the planet should be getting slowly cooler. Instead, it is warming faster and faster. And we are responsible for all of that warming. The science is also clear that every additional bit of warming matters. For every 10th of a degree, we can put a number on how much worse it gets. Billions of dollars in flood, wildfire, and storm damage, millions of avoidable deaths from extreme heat, air pollution, and more. Now, steady increases in heat waves and crop losses are bad enough, but the further we go past 1.5 degrees C, the greater the risk of the dangerous tipping points Dr. Rockstrom warned us about. So the obvious question is, if the science is this clear, and it is, and it has been for decades, then why haven't we fixed this already? Despite decades of deliberate disinformation that continues to be amplified today, the majority of people know the 4 basics. Most people know climate change is real, it is human-caused, it is serious, and the experts agree. These 4 things make us worried. And yet, even though the majority of people in almost every country around the world, including this one, are already worried about climate change, awareness does not necessarily lead to action. Too often, we think if we just explain the facts more clearly, that will be enough. But it isn't, because if we don't know what to do, we'll do nothing. To act, we need to know 2 more things. We need to know that we are not alone. Others care, and we need to know that there is hope. Hope is not wishful thinking. Hope is knowing that if we act, it will make a difference. And that is exactly what the science says. Every action matters. When it comes to climate solutions, there's no one action that will fix it all. But there are so many that together give us more than enough to meet our climate goals. Transitioning from the dirty fossil fuels of the past to the clean energy of the future, protecting and restoring ecosystems that absorb carbon and shelter us from flood and heat, transforming food systems to reduce waste and emissions, investing in resilience so the most vulnerable communities benefit most. We cannot prevent this catastrophe alone. But together we can, by setting stronger targets, by moving faster timelines, and by making deeper commitments. Why? Because the science tells us that every bit of warming matters, every year matters, every choice matters, not to the planet will endure. It matters to us. When I had a child, I made the biggest wager anyone can place on the future. And you may have done that too. The scariest part is that the outcome of that bet doesn't depend on me alone. It depends on all of us, on our willingness to choose courage over fear, action over delay, and most of all, hope over despair. I believe it's a bet we can still win, and that's why every day I practice hope. Not as a feeling, but as a discipline, one that's essential to the fight ahead. I won't give up on a better future, and I hope you won't either, because what's at stake is nothing less than everything and everyone we love.
Thank you, Professor Rockstrom and Professor Hayhoe, and every day we will all practice hope as well. It's now my honor to invite the Secretary General to the podium to deliver his remarks.
Excellencies, dear friends, as we have just heard, it is still possible to limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees by century's end. We know what permanently breaching that limit would mean for people and planet. The science compels climate action, so does the economics. Clean energy is powering jobs, growth and sustainable development, generating the fastest and cheapest electricity, insulating economies from volatile fossil fuel markets, providing energy security and sovereignty, and helping to deliver clean and affordable energy for all. Despite vast fossil fuel subsidies distorting markets, clean energy received double the investment of fossil fuels last year. The bottom line, clean is competitive and climate action is imperative. Excellencies, the Paris Agreement has made a difference. In the last 10 years, projected global temperature rise has dropped from 4 degrees Celsius to less than 3 if current NDCs are fully implemented. Now, we need new plans for 2035 that go much further and much faster, delivering dramatic emissions cuts aligned with 1.5 degrees, covering all emissions and sectors, and accelerating a just energy transition globally. Your new plans can take us a significant step forward. A UN report will calculate their impact for global emissions. If they fall short, we must create the conditions for a decade of acceleration. We know it can be done. China met its 2030 wind and solar target 6 years ahead of schedule. India reached 50% electricity capacity from non-fossil fuels 5 years early. We are in the dawn of a new energy era. we must seize this moment of opportunity. COP30 in Brazil must conclude with a credible global response plan to get us on track. 5 areas are crucial. First, energy. Fossil fuels still dominate. We must supercharge the clean energy transition, investing in grids and storage to unlock the full potential of renewables, lowering capital costs for developing countries, and redirecting fossil fuel subsidies to a just transition. Second, methane, a potent global heating gas. Drastic cuts this decade are essential, and most can be achieved quickly and cheaply. The International Energy Agency estimates fossil fuel operations could cut 40% of methane emissions today with no net costs. Third, forests. We must end the destruction of nature's greatest carbon sinks. This could deliver a fifth of needed emissions reductions by 2030. Fourth, heavy industry. We have seen important advances in technologies to cut emissions from steel and cement and heavy transport. They must be deployed urgently. Fifth, climate justice. Developing countries that did least to cause the crisis are suffering the most. Climate disasters are inflicting damages that exceed the GDP of some small islands. Droughts and floods are taking lives, fueling hunger and inflaming conflict, all while finance gaps prevent investments in adaptation and resilience. We need urgent action to unlock funds for developing countries, to seize clean energy benefits and protect lives and economies. And that requires reforming the international financial architecture to strengthen developing countries' participation. We need effective debt relief and scaled-up solutions like debt swaps and disaster pause clauses. We need a major increase in the lending capacity of multilateral development banks and significant contributions to the Loss and Damage Fund, including from innovative sources, and a major boost in adaptation finance, with developing countries meeting their pledge to double funding this year. COP30 must show a credible path to mobilizing the $1.3 trillion annually in climate finance by 2035, as agreed at COP29 in Baku. Identifying sources, existing and new, outlining policies, instruments and actions to make finance accessible, affordable and at scale, and establishing credible accountability measures to verify progress. Excellencies, the science demands action. The law commands it. The economics compel it, and people are calling for it. I look forward to hearing how you will respond, and the UN stands ready to help you to deliver. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Secretary General. I now have the honor to invite His Excellency Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, President of Brazil, to deliver his remarks.
Só um minutinho. Cadê minha nominata, igreja? Não precisa não, Moraes. É? Eu nem enxergo. Eu quero.
Well, I'd like to greet our Secretary General and say to him how happy I am to be taking part at this high-level event on climate action. Less than 50 days stand between this meeting and COP30. It is time to ask whether the world will arrive in Berlin with its homework done. The Paris Agreement gave countries the freedom to set emission reduction targets consistent with their realities and capacities. But the submission of nationally determined contributions is not an option, as it was made clear by the International Court of Justice. It is an obligation. In a world where serious violations have become commonplace, failing to submit an NDC may seem like a lesser evil. But without the collection of NDCs, the planet is moving in the dark. Only with a full picture will we know where we are going and at what pace. Today, the countries gathered here are fulfilling their duty. But there are others that have not yet done so. The denialism we face is not only related to climate, it is multilateral. No one is safe from the effects of climate change. Walls at borders will not stop droughts or storms. Nature does not bow down to bombs or warships. No country stands above another. The risk of unilateralism is the chain reaction it provokes. Each broken commitment is an invitation to new isolated actions. The result is a vicious cycle of mistrust and paralysis. We need to restore confidence and conviction in collective mobilization. If it were not for the Paris Agreement, we would already be on track for a 4-degree rise in Earth's average temperature. And if we are able to protect the ozone layer, we can also stop global warming. Fatalism is the worst enemy of action. The energy transition opens the door to a productive and technological transformation comparable to the Industrial Revolution. Nationally determined contributions are the roadmap that will guide each country through this change. They are not mere numbers or percentages. They are an opportunity to rethink models and reorient policies and investments toward a new economic paradigm. For this to happen on a global scale, wealthy nations need to bring forward their climate neutrality targets and expand access to resources and technologies for developing countries. The principle of common but differentiated responsibilities remains valid. Brazil was the second country to present its new NDC. We are committed to reducing emissions of all greenhouse gases by between 59 and 67%, covering all sectors of the economy. Our goal of ending deforestation by 2030 will continue to help make this objective a reality. By hosting COP in the Amazon, Brazil wants to show that it is impossible to preserve nature without caring for people. There is no way to revolutionize our relationship with the planet without engaging a wide range of stakeholders. This is why we promoted the global ethical stocktake with 6 regional dialogues that included representatives from civil society, the private sector, indigenous peoples and traditional communities, scientists, artists, religious leaders, and local authorities. The voice of the people must reach heads of state and government. We want to promote a leaders' summit that fosters a frank and direct dialogue worthy of the mission entrusted to us by our societies. We have the chance to right injustices and build a prosperous and sustainable future for everyone. Thus, I call on the countries that have not yet submitted their NDCs. The success of COP30 in Berlin depends on you. Let us make the Amazon the stage for a decisive moment in the history of multilateralism. I have said and have been saying that COP30, Mr. Secretary General, is the COP of truth. This COP is going to have to say whether or not we believe what science is showing us. If we, leaders, heads of states, if we trust or don't trust science, because we're going to have to make a decision. Because if we do not make a decision, society is going to stop believing its leaders. And instead of strengthening the struggle against global warming, we are going to help discredit multilateralism, policies, and in democracy. And all of us will lose because denialism may actually win. Thus, the ball is in COP30's court, and I hope to rely on all of you and see all of you there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. And now let me open the floor to heads of state and government. And Excellencies, in the interest of time and ensuring that all participants get to speak, I encourage you to keep your interventions to a maximum of 3 minutes. Leaders will speak from one of the lecterns at the front of the room. You'll be escorted from your seats to the lectern by UN protocol. To begin, I am delighted to introduce His Excellency Xi Jinping, President of the People's Republic of China.
Your Excellency Secretary General António Guterres, Your Excellency President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, colleagues, this year marks the 10th anniversary of the Paris Agreement, a pivotal year for countries to submit their new nationally determined contributions. Global climate governance is entering a key stage. I wish to share with you 3 points. First, we must firm up confidence. Green and low-carbon transition is the trend of our time. While some country is acting against it, the international community should stay focused on the right direction, remain unwavering in confidence, unremitting in actions, and unrelenting in intensity, and push for formulation and delivery on NDCs, with a view to providing more positive energy to the cooperation on global climate governance. Second, we must live up to responsibilities. In the course of global green transition, fairness and equity should be upheld, and the right to development of developing countries fully respected. The transition should serve to narrow rather than widen the North-South gap. countries need to honor the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities, whereby developed countries should take the lead in fulfilling emission reduction obligations and provide more financial and technological support to developing countries. Third, we must deepen cooperation. The world now faces a huge demand for green development. It is important that countries strengthen international coordination in green technologies and industries to address the shortfall in green production capacity and ensure free flow of quality green products globally, so that the benefits of green development can reach all corners of the world. Colleagues, let me take this opportunity to announce China's new NDCs as follows. China will, by 2035, reduce economy-wide net greenhouse gas emissions by 7% to 10% from peak levels, striving to do better. Increase the share of non-fossil fuels in total energy consumption to over 30%. Expand the installed capacity of wind and solar power to over 6 times the 2020 levels, striving to bring the total to 3,600 gigawatts. Scale up the total forest stock volume to over 24 billion cubic meters. Make new energy vehicles the mainstream in the sales of new vehicles. Expand the national carbon emissions trading market to cover major high-emission sectors, and basically establish a climate-adaptive society. These targets represent China's best efforts based on the requirements of the Paris Agreement. Meeting these targets requires both painstaking efforts by China itself and a supportive and open international environment. We have the resolve and confidence to deliver on our commitments. Colleagues, great visions require concrete actions. Climate response is an urgent yet long-term task. Let's all step up our actions to realize the beautiful vision of harmony between man and nature and preserve planet Earth, the place we call home. Thank you.